Hello and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host Rob. In today's video I want to talk about the recent announcement at Hasbro that they're going to be laying off an additional 1,100 employees. And I say additional because they already laid off 800 or 900 earlier this year. So let's basically call it an even 2,000 give or take. Obviously first things first, the timing is terrible. You're announcing that you're laying off a bunch of people for Christmas. I have seen people say that these people are already laid off. That's actually not true. The majority of the layoffs are going to be happening next year. But it still sucks. And my condolences to anybody who is affected by these, obviously. These are Hasbro-wide, right? They're not just Wizards of the Coast. It's not just Dungeons and Dragons. But it will impact D&D as well, of course. And on the one hand, I want to say I understand their position where sales have been down. It's not been a good year for Hasbro in general. And, you know, I understand you have to do something. But at the same time, the D&D franchise has been like one of your only profitable parts of the company this year. I believe, I mean, granted, a lot of this was because it's the success of Baldur's Gate 3. Because, you know, they purchased a license and they got money from that. And I believe they must have gotten like residuals of some sort as well. But apparently they made $63 million on their, you know, what they made from Baldur's Gate 3. They didn't even make the game, right? So, I mean, and that's just in the third quarter, you know, so that's a pretty good revenue there. You know, you also had the D&D movie earlier this year. So like the D&D arm of Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast specifically has actually been doing quite well. But, you know, what do you do? I do want to say, though, that so many of these problems that I think are now facing, we'll talk more Wizards of the Coast specifically, are just self-inflicted injuries. I mean, going back to the licensing issue with the open game license, of course. You also had the Pinkertons fiasco where somebody got like some Magic of the Gathering cards in advance of the new release. And when they did a video about it, they literally sent guys to the guy's house. You know, that's not a good look, especially in the day and age where we have a little thing called the internet. And, you know, it's not the 1920s or whatever, right? It's like people can literally film your guys showing up at their house trying to bully and intimidate them and get the cards back and then put that on YouTube, on their already successful YouTube channel where they usually review Magic cards. Now they're exposing you for sending a bunch of goons to their house to get their cards back because you weren't supposed to have those cards quite yet. But guess what? That wasn't that guy's fault. That was your fault, Wizards. So, you know, just one fiasco after another, basically. And the whole time, we've got all these corporate executives making millions of dollars and laying off, you know, the employees, go figure, who, you know, had nothing to do with the licensing fiasco, by the way. And it's just one thing after another like this. And it really sucks because I don't want to have to do a bunch of videos talking about what a trash company Wizards of the Coast is. I want to talk about like how great their products are and talk about more D&D stuff. But every time they do anything, you're just like, man, how do I not talk about this? And if I don't address it, then, you know, my subscribers are going to, and I think rightly, complain that, you know, I'm like protecting Wizards of the Coast, or I'm like, you know, not wanting to talk about these controversies just because I like the game. And I think that that's a legitimate thing that needs to be addressed, you know? The company itself is, like, we need to be able to separate that out from the product and say, like, I can like the product and hate the people that are producing it. And, you know, they're just not a good company. What can I say? And I mean, you know, before we go too far, the old TSR days, you know, they had their scandals and problems too, right? It's not like they were a perfect company. But I think this kind of ties in a little with what I talked about in my last video, where companies kind of go through this cycle, right? Where you get like these creative people at the beginning and they have an idea and a dream and they kind of like try to make it work, right? And hopefully they've got some people with some actual business knowledge, not just a bunch of dreamers with a cool idea, because that's kind of how you get to that next stage where you actually stabilize and become successful and make a successful product, right? Like a classic example of this would probably be Apple, right? Steve Jobs wasn't necessarily, he basically told his guys, hey, make this, make this, make this. But to Steve's credit, even though he wasn't the creative genius who was designing all these things, when he said, I want to put 1,000 songs in your pocket, and they made like the iPod, nobody else had done that before. A lot of people thought it was a stupid idea and it wouldn't be able to work and whatnot. He made it work, right? Same with smartphones, same with a lot of that stuff. And my point is, you kind of need these business people, but you also still need your creative people. And I think Wizards of the Coast has gotten to that stage now where all the people who first had this vision of what they wanted to produce, and like Gary Gygax has passed on. His son's not part of the company, and they actually tried to crush him when he started his own rival company. And so you've got like all these people that were originally part of like the building and the creation and the expansion of this stuff, those first and second generation type people, but none of them are really there now. And now it's a bunch of executives and suits and people who've brought over from other companies, Microsoft being one of the most obvious ones, right? And these people are not part of that creative vision. They don't play the game. They're not really in touch with the fan base. They don't really even seem to understand what fans are even looking for in a lot of cases. All they want to do is to try to make money. And I understand that impulse. But preferably, instead of trying to find new ways to like milk the fans and the customers, you would make your money by just creating a better product and then selling that to these people. Because if you make great products, we will buy them. We want to like your stuff, we really do. But like I said, this is what happens when all those people that were like closest to the original dream and who maybe didn't even have the original dream, but like started playing the game and fell in love with the game and then wanted to work in that industry and, built creative things. And then you kind of like distance yourself from all those people and move away because, you don't want those people anymore. Now you want, a bunch of Microsoft people who know how to, charge people money for their system updates and everything else that they do, I just think that this is a really, really bad sign because it does seem to be a company that is in decline. And I'm sure that some of these jobs, like one thing that happens in all these companies is you do get bloat, It's not like you got thousands and thousands of people working on D&D. A lot of these companies, you've got, the people you need to make the product, and then you get that middle management layer. And over time, the middle management layer just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But the people actually creating the project, they don't really expand that much, And usually as soon as that product is done, then, they're the first ones to go, of course, right? And so I'm sure a lot of these layoffs are to try to address that, right? And that doesn't mean that I'm in favor of them. Obviously, I don't want to see anybody lose their job, And like I said, the timing is terrible. The whole situation is terrible, But all these companies, they're so willing to just like cut their employees. So much of this is really like their own poor decisions that have put the company in this position to begin with. And like I said, are the people behind the licensing fiasco going to get let go? I don't think so. Are the people who sent a bunch of Pinkertons to a guy's house, are they gone? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure they're still there, And all this like upper management that, I talk about the middle management bloat. That's usually where the bloat comes in. But you've also got all these, top-end people making millions of dollars a year. Their job doesn't seem to be on the line. It's just the, 2,000 employees. They're the ones that are going to get let go. And I mean, that is worldwide, right? It's not just in America. It's not, obviously we don't have, well, at least I don't think we have 2,000 people working on D&D. I mean, who knows? But either way, it's a crappy situation. And it just seems more and more as time goes on that the people at like Hasbro specifically, but even Wizards of the Coast, they just don't seem to understand the customers. They don't understand the fan base. And, this is the kind of situation your company gets into when it's no longer trying to sell a quality product to the customer. And I'm sure next year will be a better year for them. I mean, they're going to have the release of the new edition. That means people are going to be buying new books and stuff. And that could be a factor right now, too. Like, I already know, I personally, but a lot of other people, too, we seem, not so willing to rush out and buy the new Wizard of the Coast D&D type products because we know that we're going to be getting a new game set, a new rule set next year, right? Although it doesn't look like it's going to be May of next year. Originally, they said early next year. I don't know if the 5th month of the year, end of the 5th month of that, it really qualifies as early. It seems more like mid-year, but whatever. Let's not, get too petty. Maybe they had to push things back or whatever. These things happen, right? But my point is that just as time goes on, we just start seeing the original people with the dream left behind. A bunch of marketing and corporate executive types run the company. They lose touch with the customer base. This is the TLDR to sum up everything I've been talking about. And as a result, things just kind of start to go bad. And I get that a lot of this isn't really D&D specific. A lot of it's just the fact that toy sales in general seem to be way down. Also, like, sales for like D&D and stuff like that were actually really good during the pandemic because people were locked in their houses and didn't have a lot of other things that they could really necessarily go do, right? So part of it could just be that they had, your sales at this level, all of a sudden you get the pandemic, they jump, you start thinking you're making all this extra money, you spend a bunch of extra money, and then the pandemic kind of ends and things kind of drop off again, And maybe that's part of the issue as well. I don't know, I'm just speculating. But even if it is, that's once again just poor management decisions from the company. But hopefully, I don't know, hopefully they manage to kind of turn the ship around. I really want our next edition of D&D to just be like everything that I love about 5th edition and maybe a bit of like what I've loved about the early editions as well, kind of combined in there. If I do have one main complaint about 5th edition, it would be that the game really did become too easy in a lot of ways. And yet, at the same time, I love things like subclasses. I love multiclassing. I love a lot of the stuff that the later editions have given us that the early editions of D&D either didn't have at all or did really, really poorly back then, And, hopefully they can just continue to make the next edition, take what worked in this edition, take the few, mostly minor things, maybe some spell balancing issues, that could be nice as well, and just, tweak it enough to give us a next product that's even better than this one. That's my hope, But the more I see of just terrible management decisions by the company and, mass layoffs and things like that are never a good sign for any company, the more it makes me question whether or not that's actually going to happen. So anyways, that's pretty much all my thoughts on it. I know it's just another video basically bashing Wizards of the Coast. But what do you do, right? I figure we might as well end the year the way we began, complaining about a bunch of Wizards of the Coast scandals and ending it with yet more Wizards of the Coast bad news, But anyways, that's everything. Thanks for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and most importantly, leave me your comments in the comment section. I look forward to seeing other people's opinions and takes on it. And obviously, like I said, I don't want to see anybody lose their job. And especially these layoffs happening, kind of beginning now, right around Christmas time. Like I said, even if the majority are next year, like they've said, it still sucks. Like, nobody wants to be like a week out from Christmas or a week and a half out from Christmas and find out you're going to lose your job. You don't want to find that out regardless of what it is. But the timing is even worse now, And again, like, these people had nothing to do with the OGL. They had nothing to do with any of Wizards' problems. And, the people who did cause these things tend to always fail upwards somehow. And, people like doing art and stuff on your projects, they're the ones who get hurt. Anyways, that's everything I've got. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.